spent 2 years getting ready for the LSAT. And I was sitting there, the lawyers, clearly a less enthused group of people. That's fine. No one's questioning your life choices. I'm sure, actually, there are a lot of people who are grateful that you all do what you do. But you obviously have never been to a Waffle House. And I will explain the relevance of that. You know what's up. Another thing that only people from the South or Midwest know about, Californians are like, what? IHOP? And it's like, no, Waffle House. I'll get there. Saturday morning, really early, Charlottesville, Virginia, and I was taking an LSAT. The LSAT. I've been flipping out like for 2 years getting ready for this thing. This is a history major. You know your options are limited. So I was sitting there about 30 minutes into the exam, and I got hungry. So I left. I got up. This is like a 12-hour exam. How long is the LSAT? It's like 24 hours. Yeah, you gotta. It's like there's blood testing. There's all kinds of things after. It's invasive. And I got up, and everyone in the room was like, "The fuck? Where's this guy going?" And I went to a Waffle House. Grabbed my buddy Jack, another fellow history major, and I was like, let's go get waffles. So we're sitting in this Waffle House on Route 29. It's probably like 9 in the morning now, and I had an epiphany. Now, this should surprise no one who's been to a Waffle House before. Waffle House is a great place for epiphanies, 24 hours a day, and cheap, delicious waffles. You know, it's the kind of place you normally go at like 3 in the morning. You've had a little bit to drink or to smoke. You're hungry. You know there's going to be something happening. It's going to be some drama, something. But this time I had an epiphany, and it was that I had just chosen waffles over the LSAT. And if I wanted waffles more than the LSAT, I probably shouldn't be a lawyer. Right? I mean, this is like the most important thing I could do for my future career, and I passed it up for waffles. Now, Waffle House waffles are good. They're not like throw your career path in the garbage good, but they're good. And it helped me realize this isn't what I should do. And 3 years of work at law school, lots of money, I should really, really want to be a lawyer. And I realized instead I just really, really wanted waffles. So I went back to my dorm, met up with my good friend Steve. We had been sort of dorm mates since move-in day at UVA, and proceeded to start trying to talk him into starting a company with me. He was a developer, CS major, a far, far, far better developer than I. So I knew I needed his help. And we'd always been riffing about cool ideas with technology, and it just seemed like this was going to be a much better prospect than really anything else, because I had no other options at that point. And Steve ended up turning down a job offer that he had lined up for when he graduated to start a company with me. And that company was not Reddit. It was called My Mobile Menu, or and I did all the branding for our companies. They say history majors are worthless, but they're wrong. It was great. I had the domain name. It was going to let people skip lines by ordering from their phone. Now, this is 2004 now, 2005, so it's pre-iPhone. Smartest phone was like a Trio. It's that phone that had the stylus. Remember that? A lot of you don't even know what a Trio is because you were like infants, but that's fine. That was the smartest phone on the market, but we thought, all right, you know what? People can use SMS. We're going to find some way for people to just skip lines because lines are dumb. And senior year spring break, we heard this guy named Paul Graham was giving a talk in Boston called How to Start a Startup. We're like, holy shit, like is a startup. We don't know how to start one. We're just doing it. So like, let's go hear this guy talk. And meanwhile, everyone else in Virginia was going down to like Cancun for their spring break. We went to Boston. Which in hindsight makes a lot of sense. The Wi-Fi on the beach is terrible. There's screen glare. I don't know why anyone would want to go to a beach. In Boston, the Wi-Fi was great, and it was overcast, so it was perfect. We went, and we grabbed him after this talk, and I talked him into getting a drink with us that night. He sat down. We pitched him. He loved it. He said it was great. Paul is not effusive with his praise. Would you say that, Ryan?
It's hard to predict, actually. He can be, and then he can't be.
Yeah, he's very yes and no. It's very on-off. He was definitely on, though. He's like, oh, this is the greatest idea. This is amazing. You're going to change the world. I know I make him sound like the comic book guy from The Simpsons, but like It's 90% there.
I went for a walk with Paul once, and there was he can be a little spacey sometimes, and this plane goes over and goes, Ryan, that's a private jet. You're going to have one of those someday. I was like trying to talk to him about something.
Yeah. It's like, stay focused, Paul. He's brilliant. Brilliant. Sometimes gets distracted by PJs in the sky. That's, all right. That's different. It just operates at a different level. And so this was a night, though, he was really excited about our company, said it was amazing. We went back to Virginia, and like a month later, he made a post on Slashdot announcing Y Combinator. This was the first ever batch of YC. No one had ever heard of it before. They were offering $6,000 per founder to come and live in Boston for 3 months. We thought, this is amazing. Like, we're about to graduate. YC is built for us. And this guy already said we were good. Like, we're in. So we applied, and he actually had emailed and said, like, you should totally apply, or you should totally apply. You've got a great chance. And we're like, okay, that's great. We're going to go. And we applied. We interviewed, gave the best interview of our lives. I don't know if you've ever had one of those first meetings with someone where it's just like fire. Like, everyone is loving it. Jessica was there. She was laughing at the joke. She got it. Robert and Trevor were stoic, asked some hard questions, but we had some good answers. We were in there for like an hour. This was very different. YC interviews now are like 30 seconds, but different time back then. Anyway, we killed the interview. We go out to go celebrate. We were drinking. I got the phone call. I was like, hello. And it was Paul, and he said we were rejected. And that sucked. The silver lining was we were already drinking, so we just continued, and that went down pretty quickly. And the next morning, hungover on the way back to Virginia, we got another call, and it was Paul. Like, okay, I'm getting a little excited. My phone's blowing up. I waited a minute. Didn't want to seem too thirsty. Let it ring a few times. Hello? Oh, Paul. Huh. How can I help you? He says, we still don't like your idea. Like, dude, you called just to say that? Like, that's just mean. Like, why would you do that? And he's like, no, hold on. We'd like you to. So if you just change your idea, we'll let you in. We're like, oh. All right. I was like, let me think about it. Interesting offer. We'll get back to you. We got to run the numbers. Be right back. Click. And I looked at Steve. And Steve had already gone and gotten the conductor to find out where the next stop was, because we were getting off that train and going right back to Boston. Called him back. Said, hey, PG, we're in. Went up to Boston. Sat with him for an hour. And what came out of that was, one, we're not going to do a mobile startup way too early. And they were right. We're not going to mess with restaurants for all the obvious reasons. And they were right. And they were just like, build something in a browser that solves your problem every morning. And Steve was a big Slashdot user. PG was really into Delicious, which could have been Pinterest. Was really into Delicious. And I would just open a bunch of tabs every morning because that was a new feature in Firefox. And like, that's how we started our days. And it just seemed really inefficient. And he was like, build something that solves that. We're like, oh, okay. Yeah, cool. And he codified it. He was like, make it the front page of the internet. We're like, this guy's going to give us $12,000 to make the front page of the internet. We've never shipped a web app before. Sucker. So we took his money. Never having. The first version of Reddit was actually built in Lisp, which the developers here will appreciate for how just esoteric and insane that was. I actually tried to learn Lisp for about a week and a half, and that I still have a problem with parentheses. It was not the best language to write it in. It crashed a lot. We eventually rewrote it in Python. Got acquired in 2006 by Condé Nast, which everyone was shocked by, including us. It was life-changing money for us at 23. We just didn't realize how much more Reddit had to grow. In fact, even Paul, when he heard about it, was like, oh, that's great. Yeah, take it. Sure. Had no expectations for you. You know? So I was like, great, set the bar low, and there you go. YC has obviously learned a lot since then. We've learned a lot since then. I've had the privilege of being a YC partner, do much stuff, book stuff. So I ended up starting a seed stage VC fund with my best friend, Gary Tan, who's an amazing investor. And we were fortunate enough to be seed investors in Flexport. Thank you, Ryan. And so we've done a little bit of that side of the table. And then about 2 years ago, Reddit, now independent, very important, now independent. About 2 years ago, Steve and I came back full-time. I came back first part-time as executive chair, and then we got Steve back full-time as CEO, and I came back full-time, moved here to San Francisco. I still miss New York, but have been here for the last 2 years. And yeah, very happy to be here with y'all. That's my story. And now
Awesome.
I think Ryan will ask questions.
I'm curious, where's your traffic rank right now? You guys are like the top. What are you on the internet? Top 5? Top 3?
According to Alexa, which is the most accurate source of traffic on the internet, we're number 4 in the United States, and I think 8 or 9 in the world.
8 or 9 in the world.
But it's Alexa, right? There's a big asterisk there because it's everyone sort of uses it, but it's measured using a sampling system that involves the Alexa toolbar. I don't know any human who uses the Alexa toolbar, but look, they're owned by Amazon, so it's legit. I mean, 4th in the US.
So you're now in quite a position of power. Reddit has a huge amount of influence, I think, even more than people quite recognize, is the amount of discourse that takes place there, the amount of opinion that's formed there, the number of journalists just trolling, looking for news stories that they can write.
Oh yeah, it's the BuzzFeed model. It's brilliant, though.
How does that play out for you guys, like on a personal level? How do you bear that responsibility? And then on the flip side, like, you must have a lot of crazy people coming to like stalk you, or any stories that you can share on that front would be really interesting for the audience.
Well, until now, I've been really fortunate because no crazy people have stalked me.
Nobody really?
I hope you didn't just inspire a bunch of people, but no, I mean, we've had little things here and there, but by and large, not so much. I mean, you
have sort of this rabid mix. You have, I don't know if you even call it fans. The Reddit users can be unruly.
They are passionate. I mean, here's the thing. So the numbers of it, about 285 million monthly active users. So slightly larger than I think Brazil in terms of population. So we've got a lot of people every month who visit the site. Now, a small percentage of those users, and this is similar for a lot of social sites, are actually active contributors in terms of commenters, submitters, voters. Now, those are what we internally call like Redditors, because they really get the system. Now, there's a ton of people who end up on r/Pokemon Go because they came up through a Google search where they found they wanted some tutorial about how to catch a Jigglypuff, and they found the perfect thread on Reddit, and they just ended up on r/Pokemon. They read it, and then they left. And who knows if they really understood what they just got. They just got the data they needed and left. And so one of the big pushes now that we finally have a mobile app, which we didn't have until last year, is using that as a way to get people to actually understand and get all the benefit from Reddit. But the core users who are active in submitting and voting and commenting, those Redditors, are extremely passionate. And I think the gift for us has been, and this is what I tell CMOs this all the time, who are like, you can tell if their company has been around before social media versus a company that was started in the post-social world, because the ones from before are a lot of them, at least, terrified about the fact that their customers now have a voice. I mean, you don't have to look very hard. I mean, look at United's like magnificent orchestra of debacles. Like that took work. That actually took like almost concerted effort to be so consistently bad for so many things. There's even a fucking scorpion on a plane. Did you see that headline too? Like they managed to be this thing. But for these companies, right, they always kind of knew in the back of their heads that word of mouth mattered. But they didn't have to see it, right? Word of mouth was happening around lunch tables and around water coolers, but they didn't see it. Maybe they would see the results a month later in sales, but they could just blanket with enough billboards and commercials to feel like, yeah, mission accomplished. Because all the people were having the same conversations around those coffee tables didn't realize that there were a million other people having that same frickin' conversation. Social media now makes that very obvious, and that sunlight spreads really, really quickly. And so all the companies built since then, you all included, have realized they have to build brands that are real time and are operating hopefully as transparently and authentically as possible, because that consumer voice exists. And so we are basically we can espouse this because we also live it. Like one of the top posts on Reddit in our first few months, imagine we're fresh out of college, like I said, it was our first web app, was the site had been down for maybe 6 to 8 hours one night because, I don't know, we're using some shitty Lisp library and the site went down. Steve was sleeping with his laptop at this point because the site just was so consistently down. And the front page story the next morning when we woke up was, Steve and Alexis, you guys are fucking idiots. The site was down for 8 hours last night. Explain yourself. So there was only one subreddit back then. It was just the one front page. But there were, a few thousand really active users who let us know when we fucked up. And so we would get in the comments and explain, like, hey, here's what happened. We're using these libraries, blah, blah, blah. We screwed up, and, we'll try to do better. But that was like from jump, and that was as a 22-year-old, right? So our mindset has, I think, and it's been a great advantage, our mindset has forever been shaped by the fact that we've had, like, our business has also been the forum of feedback. So we know if we're doing a good job. We know if we're not doing a good job. And then we also know that, like, the vocal minority is not necessarily representative of the broader majority, and you can learn that through data. That was a crazy thing. We didn't even have a data team 2 years ago. And so, yeah, we were sampling, we were paying for like a fraction of Google Analytics and then just like multiplying it by 10. So we were sampling the Google Analytics, and that was the extent of it. The site was not instrumented at all. Like, we didn't know anything. Now, lots changed. But now we can make decisions. Like, we actually did our first A/B test last year as a company, first A/B test. And this is, again, credit to Steve and the product folks and engineering folks and leaders that we brought in who have brought this professionalism to it now, so we can make decisions using data, and have that silent majority actually have a voice.
Yeah, and so you have been, you personally probably in the company have been criticized many times by users, I think, and you said the vocal minority. How do you decide which one, whether to listen to that or look at like overall numbers, or what? How do you decide when is like appropriate to actually take response based on criticism that you get?
It is a balancing act. It's usually okay. The data is really, really powerful in terms of informing a decision, because we can actually do an A/B test now. Because we can actually, even if we're making a slight change or some tweak, we can actually look at engagement numbers. We can see what happens before and after for the sample we push it in front of. And then there are still things that we know we have to be pushing toward as a company, as a platform to succeed. If we want to have 1 billion users on Reddit, we have to do things that will help Reddit be a place for just about anyone to find their home and find their communities. There's 100,000 communities, 150, there's a lot, 1,000 communities on Reddit. Whatever your interest, whatever your passion, whatever sports team you're into, whatever hobby, they're there. Right now, the experience of finding it, especially on desktop, is abysmal. And we know that if we help a new user understand how Reddit works and find a community of stuff they're into, they are much more likely to stick around. And that will involve making changes to UX, to UI. You can see a lot of this in the mobile app, which actually looks modern and fast and beautiful. And so if there's pushback that like, oh goodness, like why, how could you change the fact that Reddit is so intimidating to a new user? That's what makes it great. We can say, well, look, we want Reddit to grow as a platform. We believe it's in the best interest of our users to have more people equals better content and more content. And we know that this is a thing we can do, and we have the data to prove out this is actually better for users, even the active, engaged, vocal ones, because we can look. The data shows that. And the important thing that we can look back on in our history is consistently every big improvement was met with some kind of vocal criticism. The top comment, and I bring this up in meetings within the company, and I have this slideshow. The top comment of the first comment on Reddit. So we allowed commenting maybe 3 months into Reddit. Reddit did not have comments when it started. When we launched commenting, the top comment, "Why did you do this? This site is fucked. I'm never coming back. What a mistake." Top comment.
Did you check that person's username? Did they come back?
Posted a week ago. Still active. A year later, the next big launch was allowing any user to create their own community, create your own subreddit. This is ultimately what helped us defeat Dig. And we kept waiting for them to do this. And I think if they had them and not done Dig 4, I think they actually would have done very well. As soon as we launched that, top comment, the site's just jumped the shark. What the site needs is tags, not communities. Like, this is so stupid, I'm never coming back. User was active 2 weeks ago. Like, you can almost guarantee that. Now that you certainly get a certain amount of hubris just thinking, just default assumption like, oh, users don't know what's best for them. That's not what I'm encouraging. What I'm encouraging is, as a founder, you have to have a vision for where this company and platform needs to grow and go. And then if you can back it up with data, which we didn't actually have back then. We were just like, well, yeah, obviously it needs fucking comments. Like, this is just a thing every forum has. If we're the next generation of forums, we need comments. But these days we can do it with data and know that, like, we're not going to be perfect. That's not the goal. The goal is to be responsive when we do make mistakes.
Speaking of comments, I think Reddit kind of it's misunderstood where people think that it's like this place for the unwashed masses to go and say horrible things and
that's just you, Ryan.
But actually,
only you think that.
But actually, every time I go into Reddit, I'm impressed, like, by the civility of the discourse, by the level of humor, by how, like, it's pretty consistent how funny people are and how, like, what a wonderfully civilized world. It's funny probably to hear me say this. I don't know. Mm-hmm. You're used to it, but I wonder if advertisers, are you misunderstood by the advertising world? Because I've also noticed you have some of the lowest cost per click in the world.
Yes.
No offense. I know you want that to be higher.
No, I know. I mean, if you guys, one way to help us with that is to buy more ads on Reddit.
Reddit ads. We do buy Reddit
Excellent.
ads.
Oh, thank you. So yes, ads on Reddit seriously are a steal right now. They're a steal, and depending on, right, there's no other platform on the internet where you can target to communities of, like, passion in the same way. And there's over 150,000 of them. So, like, whatever weird niche passion point, like, there are people who I'm sure obsess over shipping and freight forwarding.
There's a logistics porn subreddit, and there's a the one that I like is
safe for work.
HeavySeas or something. It's just pictures of ships going through rough waves.
Yes. Amazing. And, like, that community can't come together anywhere else.
It's not actual porn. It's pictures of logistics things.
Yeah. That's all safe for work. But that's part of the magic of Reddit. If you can think of Facebook, and the Facebook universe occupies, like, your sort of government name identity. And it's basically the place where you go to share the things so that your friends from college are jealous of you, right? You show your cute photo of, like, how great your life is, or your filtered photo of your kale so people think you have a wonderful taste. Like, and that's fine. Like, that's the type of connection all humans need. It's like cocktail party connection. Like, how's your vacation? How are the kids? How's the puppy? Reddit is where, because the thing that matters is, like, your shared passion and you're only identified by a username, all you know about everyone on that subreddit is that you all love photos of giant shipping containers or boats, and that's a weird thing, right? If I posted that on my Facebook, right, oh my god, I love this boat, but I'd probably get some weird comments from people, right? We choose very deliberately to filter that stuff because we're creating a version of ourself, right, our government name self, that's really important to us. Reddit lets us be our authentic selves, and if we love looking at photos and discussing ships that are overloaded with containers, like, great, that's awesome. But I think you're right. It has been a thing over the last 2 years we've made a lot of progress on, but has been a challenge with advertisers who just didn't really. I think the design of the site has a huge impact on it. It's been, the desktop site is just lodged in people's brains, and it's getting updated. But it's ugly.
Can you tell us
before the end of the year?
Cool.
Yeah, hopefully Q3. And we've already started testing it. The designs look amazing. Mobile is if you look at the mobile app, which you should all download.
Will the top comment be this? You are screwed. You have ruined the business.
No doubt. and the good news is we've been testing this thing for months now. And it's exciting to see because we're not breaking any of the.
How do you test it? Is some small percentage of Reddit users already seeing the new site?
Small percentage of users are seeing the site, and then
internally.
And then also bringing in the focus groups, like actually bringing in humans and watching them use the site and all that good stuff. And so, like, we wouldn't break any of the core functionality. That would be like a dig version 4 move. The goal is instead to help people just be less intimidated by Reddit on first glance at desktop. And then mobile's already doing that. And the engagement rates on our mobile are destroying engagement on desktop, which I guess shouldn't be a surprise. But we didn't have a mobile app last year, so this was a big deal to Reddit. We're catching up.
You had like a third-party Reddit mobile.
It was all third-party apps.
Right?
Dude, Alien Blue was a single developer in Australia, amazing guy. And he was just chilling in Melbourne doing this in his spare time. But like we didn't have a mobile app until last year.
Reddit Alien? Is that where Alien Blue comes from?
Oh, no, I think he just wanted to avoid trademark infringement.
Right.
So he was just like alien blue. I don't know why. I think he chose blue because he liked the color.
Okay.
But we had to build native apps from scratch because, well, it was 2016. You need a fucking native app. We actually had like 40% of our traffic on mobile that was coming through people using the desktop site on their mobile browser, like pinching and zooming. Thank you, bless you. But like, that's like a form, that's some masochism. Like, no one should have to do that. And that's what they were doing for years. So I've lost track of the original question, but yes,
I'll ask another one.
Brands love Reddit now.
How have you organized for the brands? Like, how have you organized your sales team? Like, do you have you have r/Redskins is a place where we both hang out. Do you have a team that's like dedicated to selling to NFL teams, or are you doing it by territory or by industry? How have you done that?
The sales team's set up by territory. We've got LA for entertainment. Entertainment's always been Reddit's bread and butter. Even before we had a functioning sales team, like movies and video games would just give us money because they knew like this is word of mouth. We want to be here for launches. So the LA team handles entertainment. We have a Pacific Northwest team based here in SF that works with a bunch of agencies here in Oregon and Seattle and Portland. And then there's a New York team. They're all pretty small though. New York's the biggest at like 15 people. And the way they actually do it, we're taking a page out of Twitter's managed sales, which is we have a sales rep who has the relationship, but then we have a team behind them, a creative team behind them that does a lot of the heavy lifting to come up with really unique, really successful campaigns for Reddit. Because they understand, like brands are starting to realize how to talk like a human, but a lot of these companies we're talking to, or their agencies, still a little behind the curve. And it makes a real difference to have someone basically back at HQ who's working with Saatchi and Toyota to say, look, y'all just spent a lot of money on this campaign. Let's make sure these native ads, which are basically like sponsored posts on Reddit, let's make sure they're really good. Let's make sure they're successful conversation starters. And it turns out it's actually just as easy as like being a decent like dinner host. If you can start a good conversation offline, you can probably start a good conversation online. And it's tricky because agencies, I think, have learned a lot of really bad habits from the pre-social world. But the really savvy ones understand that like at the end of the day, most of it's just like talk to people like humans. And so we have a creative team that now helps. So like you've got your point person on sales, but there's a team behind them churning up creative, doing everything from helping them make custom GIFs because we know those will perform well if it's like say a movie or video game, to literally helping them with the copy because we want them to be successful, especially early, because we can use the Coke we used the Coke Super Bowl campaign from 2 years ago as like a talking point for the next 6 months because it's Coca-Cola, really brand safe brand, multinational. Like they take L's all the time from social campaigns gone awry. I don't know if you saw the infamous Twitter Mein Kampf Coke campaign. They don't talk about that one a lot. Yeah, no, it was brutal and it got hijacked on Twitter. Anyway, Coke was basically tweeting out Mein Kampf verses with their branding. It was not a good look. Google it. And so just off the heels of that, they're coming to us and they're like, all right, we want to invest in Reddit. We want to spend for the Super Bowl ad. We're like, all right, we got you. Don't worry. And they actually had a really, really successful campaign. Like the sentiment on it was like 98% positive. And that just took someone from the creative team basically just giving them good feedback on the campaign they were running. And then we can use that for the next 3 months to open doors with other agencies, to leapfrog to even bigger deals like the Toyota Saatchi one. And then use that to other agencies and show that success. And that's it. I mean, this is a process that ideally we would have started 7 years ago, but Steve and I left the company. And so now we're starting it about 7 years later. And instead of educating the market, we basically have to re-educate the market. And that's the gift and the curse of being a 12-year-old site that's actually like 3 years old internally. And so I wouldn't trade it because the other advantage is we have scale. Like we're the fourth most traffic site in the US. But the perception we've built over the last 7 years is the thing we now have to overcome in a lot of cases. But we're making good progress.
One more question. We'll see if the audience has any. But I'm curious about the future for Reddit. So you've sort of recapitalized. You raised some capital, took it out of Condé.
Yes,
Nast.
independence.
You became chairman. How do you think about options from here forward? Is Reddit an IPO candidate company? What would is that a goal? What would have to happen?
Flexport an IPO candidate company?
Is who?
Is Flexport an IPO candidate company?
I'm afraid of the scrutiny, but yes.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's looking forward to that, man. The public markets, it's
so you have patient capital that's willing to ride it out and say, look, we're going to build one of the biggest companies on the internet.
Yeah,
you already have.
The thing I am reminded of is, Facebook's actually only about a year and a half older than Reddit. Like, I think Zuck started it in 03, maybe 04. So that's really humbling.
How's that make you feel?
I mean, it's really, really humbling. Though, like I said, I think there is still always going to be a need for yourself on a social network where you are being like Alexis Ohanian and you're taking pretty photos of your kale so that your college friends are jealous. But there's, I think, an even stronger need for us as humans to connect about the things we're actually passionate about and connect with people in a way where it's not about showing about how great your life is. It's about actually connecting. Even when you're having a shitty day, like r/relationships, is an amazing community of people just talking about dealing with relationship issues. It's like the modern day, what was that newspaper column?
Is that why Serena says you're so nice?
Thank you. Wait, what?
Is that why she says you're so nice?
Maybe. Yeah, because I get all of my relationship advice from the internet. It's not true. Although it is a really interesting lens, and I do think and this has been a big challenge, and we're trying to come up with better ways to productize this, but my subreddit subscription is insane. Like, I've got hundreds, right? I'm not a normal user.
If you leave, will they be like, oh no, Alexis has left our subreddit?
No, I'm a lurker on a lot of these.
Yeah.
And so they don't even know. But it gives me insights into different communities that I could never possibly have. And it's been actually really interesting. So, I'll get these things above the feed. I'm not Muslim, but I subscribe to r/Islam. And I'll get these posts in my feed, which are like the memes going on in the Muslim community and probably in the United States. Most of our users are in the US, or at least the Anglophone countries of the world. And it's interesting because it's a glimpse into real conversation, real perspective that I just don't get. And I found it to be, you can think of all the different communities that you are or are not a part of. They all exist on Reddit. And it's insight that I've found to actually be really helpful. And then there's others, like our sneakers basically tells me what shoes to buy. Because I was at the gym earlier, so I'm not flexing with these. Give me another chance, guys. Why did I bring up our sneakers? I know. Ooh, wait, really? Oh, all right, noted. All right. These are the Australian or New Zealand, or what's the
Wolves from New Zealand? Companies here in San Francisco.
Oh, really? All right, a lot of sheep in New Zealand. That's a smart business. Are they comfortable? A lot of sheep. Seriously, the sheep-to-person ratio, Google it. It's insane. It's insane. But yeah, there are so many insights to be gained from that.
What do you do when two of these communities clash with each other?
Oh, that never happens. No, a lot of the tools that we've built over the years are either to thwart cheaters who have tried to game Reddit because they realize how valuable it is to get on the front page, and so they'll try to game it, or to thwart assholes who are doing exactly that. What we've learned, so we have our first hire from way back in the day, Chris Lowe, one of the smartest, hardest working, most awesome people I know. He rejoined us as well about a couple years ago, and he leads the anti-evil team. And their mandate is to use all of their brain power and programming and engineering ability to build tools to help our community, trust and safety, legal teams, and actually, everyone, but especially those teams, thwart evildoers. And that's everything from it's spam 1 month, and they literally decimated spam, took it down to 10% because that was a problem mods were having, to brigading when users want to just get into fights with one another from different communities. It's an arms race. It's never ending, but we have some of our best minds working on it. And yes, they could be working on revenue or growth, which are the traditional Silicon Valley things we should be having them work on. But it's basically a trade-off where we would rather have the long-term health than a few short-term gains in revenue and growth. So we're willing to make that trade-off. And they do great work to help mitigate this stuff. It's never perfect. But when you've got the smartest, hardest working people in the building working on this stuff, it's cool. It's very cool.
Okay, who has a question for Alexis here?
Yes.
So you're going to get to tons and tons of users, but as you keep growing. But I think one of the interesting segments in Reddit that's emerging are all the bots and all of the that aren't spam but are bots. So how do you guys address that? Do you guys have a bot team, and do you develop for those bots?
So we don't yet. So bots are really interesting. We're lucky because we have a really talented user base that are building these things. Most of them have been built over the years because we just neglected to build features. And so users are just like, screw it, we'll do it ourselves, which is great. Our goal is to take a lot of those best things and just build them into Reddit so they don't have to be hacks in the form of bots. But we're finally starting to put some work towards our API, which will make bot developers' lives a lot better.
Yeah, I love the subreddit that's just bots talking to each other. Like the generative subreddit, it's great.
You can learn a lot. And there's subreddit simulator too, which will just make up entire posts. Yeah, you got to check it out. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Hey, so there's a narrative like in the story of Reddit where like you and Huffman built the site and then sold to Condé Nast and like it left in stasis for a long time. And now you guys like have picked it back up and it's growing again. I guess like what is the biggest thing that deviates from that story, whether it's something that like the Condé Nast period, like they actually did very well, or something that broke down that like it wasn't stasis, it was like destruction or something.
That's a great narrative. It's basically accurate. I think the biggest thing that Condé doesn't get enough credit for was during that period, they kept the site online. Like the people who were there were an underfunded team that had just enough to basically keep the site running. And admittedly, Condé is not a tech company and didn't have the capabilities to like really know how to build that out. And the site kept growing. Like the site literally doubled every year during those years. So it wasn't like exponential, but I mean, it's still legitimate. It's legitimate. And I think the fact that it kept growing in spite of not changing, like in spite of not having any real product improvements and not having mobile apps and all that stuff, was a testament to the fact that the team that was there did everything they could to basically keep the lights on and keep the site scaling and growing in lieu of updating features and whatnot. But that was the big difference. You know, Steve learned so much at Hipmunk, which was the company co-founded in between, where like travel search is a brutal industry. It's awful. It's terrible. Don't start a travel search startup because it's the margins are tiny. It basically becomes ad arbitrage where you're just desperate to get any user as cheaply as possible and hopefully get them to convert. But that created so much discipline and taught him so much about using data and about being intelligent and thoughtful with product plan and shipping, that all of that awful experience ported over to a site, basically all the experience of trying to grow a site that didn't grow at all organically and bringing that to a company that just grew every year without knowing anything, was really formidable. And so we were able to bring in awesome execs who actually built out product and engineering to do that stuff that we should have done years ago. But I don't want to be too hard on Condé because like they did actually, they did just enough that it didn't go away. And a credit to all the engineers and people who were there in that period who kept it online.
So you had said earlier that you guys are trying to build Reddit into a platform, which I think is really interesting and certainly something that we at Flexport have said, but you guys are simultaneously definitely trying to push people away from all of these third-party platformy API apps into your native app. And the biggest difference currently between those is that your native app has way more ads. And like you were talking about bots and you're talking about building out your API and like, it's kind of, how do you guys think about Reddit as a platform? Like, are you trying to, how do you avoid the Twitter thing of like, hey, we have all these APIs, but then as soon as they become business, unproductive, we're just going to kill them.
So we definitely don't want that. That's a big part of the reason why we actually haven't, we haven't had any interest in shutting off or pressuring any of the third-party apps. Like the goal was, let's build an app that's so much better. And I think the reviews, I mean, the team's done an amazing job. The reviews speak for themselves. Let's build an app that's better, that wins because it's better. And if there are people who still have their preferences for yada, yada, yada app, like, cool, that's great. But in the long term, I mean, right now, we have a small team thinking about and working on all things API. we know that business opportunity is significant because that data is really, really, really valuable to give people insight into like what is trending. Again, we don't need to know anything about your birthday. We don't need to know any of this personal information about you. We just need to know that, you know, you're a subscriber to r/sneakers, and that actually tells us a lot. And in aggregate, actually really tells us real trends about what's happening, and that forecasting is valuable. In the short term, all the plans, you're right, are just on our core products because they either didn't exist or were really bad. But long term, we know it has to be bigger than that. So I really truly believe going to learn from where Twitter misstepped in terms of how they treated third-party developers. And like I said, the mandate from jump, even when we announced the app internally, was like, look, we just have to build a better app. If we win that way, then that's the only really way that we feel like we can win.
Anybody else? Maybe two more, maybe? Right here.
Two questions. One, do you happen to know, or do you collect the data of the demographics of gender?
So we don't know any of that data of users, presumably. We don't know that data. We survey it. Based on our survey, so there's a few, okay. Based on the survey we did last year, it was 53% men, 47% women.
Wow, that's interesting.
Which I know that surprises a lot of folks. I think
it was all teenage boys.
It's the median age was I think 29. But again, remember, really almost all English speaking. But I mean, look, it's almost 300 million people. We've not even tried. We want to, believe me, but it has not. I mean, we didn't have a mobile app until last year, so we baby steps. And so you're right, it's almost 300 million people. So it's really, there are not, I might be wrong. I don't think there are 300 million teenage boys in the English speaking world. Maybe there are. No, probably not. Thankfully. But part of what we have to do is, and this is a product thing, this is a comms thing, this is an everything thing. Part of what we have to do is change that perception so that's not a shocking number when we say it.
Yeah, follow-up question. I'm a user. I'm not active, but I'm passive, I would say. What I see and what I've noted after the election, especially after what came out with Facebook and how Mark Zuckerberg kind of took a little bit of responsibility with this whole fake news thing, do you see any problem with the fact that subreddits kind of put people together in a box and make it an echo chamber? And how, have you guys discussed that?
Yeah. So yes, fake news we looked into this using the BuzzFeed study. Fake news was not as bad on Reddit, or it really wasn't that significant for two inadvertent reasons. One, because so many of those websites were also trying to cheat Reddit and like ring voting and that sort of thing. And because we've spent a decade building anti-ring voting tools, a lot of them just got thwarted, so they never got any traction. And then the other reason was because the only places where those would get actively voted up were fairly small communities, like the politics community, the really massive communities where you'd want to get all those views. They either the mods banned it because it was fake, or the users downvoted it because it just wasn't high quality.
Are mods users?
Mods are users. They are volunteer moderators. It's like starting a WordPress blog, except you don't spend any of your time posting. You spend all of your time dealing with the community. But it's like the inverse, because I guess you could have comments in your WordPress blog, but it's the exact opposite. But that said, I think that's the thing we're trying to thread, which is, yes, you got communities like the Donald, you've got communities like Sanders for President, which, fun fact, was actually, I think six times was the number I was told. It was 6 times more engaged during the campaign than the Donalds. It's just after the nomination, they all scattered. But part of the nature of the platform is, right, there's hundreds of thousand plus communities. We let people come together, whether it's a sneaker or a presidential candidate, to talk about it. The good news is, I think a lot of great stuff comes from that. The bad news is you do get these echo chambers where people, they are deliberately upvoting stuff that they all just want to sort of believe in. And if it's sneakers, no one really cares. If it's a political candidate, people really care. And what we are trying to tread very carefully on is creating enough of an environment where we want we want ideas and we want people to feel like they can express themselves that don't run afoul of the rules of the road of the platform. So you probably saw like last week, we banned, I think 3 of the mods of the Donald because they refused to follow the policy that our company has put in place and that the trust and safety team was enforcing. They were upset, but whatever. These are the rules. Like it's fairly straightforward. And every month we have a policy update meeting that includes me as well as the heads of our community, trust and safety, legal, and I think product team, where we basically all just review what's happened. And so we'll see these trends. Like the kind of discussions we have are based around like, this is the one that we're right in the middle of right now actually, is looking at the like a way to phrase violence against animals and glorifying that distinguishes between a subreddit full of people talking about hunting from like r/hunting, which exists, active community, and it's usually photos of people with like, here's my mounted deer, to one that like could be one of those glorified, like really awful, like snuff rodent killing video things that ends up like on Live Leak. And right. So what is the kinds of discussions are like, where do we draw the line? Because like this feels wrong because it feels like it glorifies it. This feels less wrong because it seems like a more normalized thing because like we know people hunt. But then there's examples of education where it's like if you have an underground video of a slaughterhouse, like that seems like it's informative even though it's even more violent and glorifying. So like these are the conversations that the team has. It's a very uplifting team. We have lots of fun doing this. But we want to try to understand rules of the road for that and enforce them in a way that's like we know is going to always be evolving, but that we hope still allows for like creativity and some amount of free expression. But we're willing to, we now actually have a team in place that when people screw up, when people break the rules, like we can punish them. And it's a pretty straightforward process now.
Just don't ban the fake news from r/conspiracy, please. It makes me terribly sad that all went away.
So r/conspiracy is a great example, right? Like I remember being in the checkout, again, in this Instacart world, I think a lot of you probably have no idea what the checkout line is, but it used to be a place where you'd go to wait to pay for your groceries, and there'd be these magazines like National Enquirer, like crazy shit, right? Like Bat Child born of Saddam Hussein and like Demi Moore, like crazy. And I just assumed in my naivete, like, oh yeah, everyone thought this is bullshit. Like, come on, it's National Enquirer. This is not real. It's clearly fake. And the magic of the World Wide Web is that people can come together around really inane, unsubstantiated things. And it's frustrating because like the sad thing is only one has to actually be true. And there are enough things that were like Gulf of Tonkin. Is that right? False flag, like Google it, right? And so for years, a bunch of conspiracy theorists were like, this is a false flag incident. And people were like, that's crazy. And then it turns out like our government did that. But it just takes one of those to then be like, okay, well, someone has to be the arbiter of this. And how is one the arbiter of the truth? This is an existential thing for me too. I'm also Armenian. So like I am still living this with the Turkish government denying the genocide even happened. And so it's like trying to wrap our heads around this is going to be something we're working on for decades. I don't think the challenge is not the fake news, the obvious, like the random, sorry, Macedonia or whatever, the random Macedonian who built a website that's full of obviously fake news that's just churning it out to get, Google AdSense traffic. That stuff we can thwart 99% of the time. Facebook's learned and they're going to fix that. Like I feel good about. It's the stuff that's the shades of gray where like, I think an end game for this, I'm just thinking out loud here. An end game for this becomes some kind of spectrum of accountability or authoritativeness. So like over time, right, we can learn that economist articles tend to be pretty trustworthy, right? Pretty true. And it becomes this, I don't know if it's 100% rank. I don't want this is not like a Rotten Tomatoes of media, but there has to be some kind of way to account for all these shades of gray, because getting an article wrong and then writing a retraction the next day does not make it fake news. it means like a human screwed up, and that's going to happen in the news making process. It doesn't mean the entire brand is totally fake. But then you have others that are clearly way further in their spectrum that are just churning out things for page views and to, stir up bullshit. But I don't know I don't know what's going to come. But we're thinking a lot about it.
Maybe one last question.
What convinced you to invest in Flexport? Obviously.
Ooh, what convinced me to invest in Flexport? Great question. Well, one, Ryan's really formidable. I think there's it's inherently interesting when a formidable founder wants to work on a deeply unsexy problem like freight forwarding, right? There are a lot of people who want to start the next events app or some kind of social app, and that's great. More power to them. But I think a lot of founders are missing huge opportunities where like real business is getting done every day using really, really terrible tools. And in best case scenario, it's crappy software like a spreadsheet. No offense, Excel, but which is great software, but come on, we need better. All the way to phone calls and file cabinets. And that's been a big thing for Gary and I. Those are industries that are ripe for it, especially now, because every one of these employees basically has a smartphone. And so every one of these employees basically goes to lunch every day and uses world-class software like Instagram or the Reddit app to take a photo of their salad. And they're every one of us is guilty of this, right? They're taking a photo and it's here, move over. Hold on, just gonna the shadow, get it right. Click, okay. And, they take 10 minutes and they upload it. But they're using world-class software to take a photo of their fucking lunch. And then they go to work where they get paid and they're working in a multi-billion-dollar industry and they're using a fucking phone or they're using some terrible software. And so consumer quality software has now infiltrated all of our brains and all of our consciousness. I'm generalizing here, but by and large, and that's such an opportunity because that kind of caliber software is now expected by just about everyone, as well as not just when they're taking photos of salad, but also in their business. And so, freight forwarding is obviously a massive, massive industry that just runs the world. And it's the reason we get the stuff. We get atoms from point A to point B. And a massive industry, formidable founder who's got good product sense. It's basically just shut up and take my money. Should have raised the price. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Oh, no, wait. Do you want to kill the feed and then you can ask me one more question?
Yeah.
This is so the couple of times I've done this, it's always been a personal question because I don't talk much about my private life publicly. So